Number one, I've lived my entire life in a small rural town in Missouri. During my 20s, my best friend Jeremy, who was a couple of years younger than me and didn't have a driver's license, lived 7 miles out of town on a country highway. For recreational activities, I was his only source of transportation. One night, after dropping him off, I was driving home. That shit's so lame. The truth is out there.
It is one of the world's greatest mysteries, Scotland's legendary Loch Ness Monster. So does the lake creature actually exist? Well, if you ask one man, he'll tell you it is in fact no myth.
Every day it's flaunted in front of your face.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads.
You just choose to ignore it.
Belief can be a powerful force. No one knows that better than the people who are sure they've seen Bigfoot.
Real accounts.
He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials, and private citizens.
From real people.
Hundreds of people turned out tonight for the unveiling of a very controversial statue.
Yeah, it really is. The Satanic Temple of Detroit revealed the 1-ton bronze statue.
It's time for you to take a swim.
I'm just excited to see my Lord and Savior Baphomet represented in such glorious Italian stone. I do hope his eyes gaze upon me, and that my allegiance is recognized.
In the dark waters.
The Dark Waters channel is for entertainment purposes only. Although information in these stories can be traced back to relevant and true sources, Dark Waters strongly discourages its viewers, listeners, and subscribers from visiting the site of incidents and encounters discussed or revealed on the show. In other words, we will not be held responsible if you are attacked by a Dogman, molested by a Bigfoot, bitten by vampires, chased by chupacabras, abducted by aliens, accosted by the Men in Black, investigated or arrested by the local law enforcement, CIA, FBI, NSA, EPA, BLM, or another alphabet group, whether on U.S. soil or abroad. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the show.
I've lived my entire life in a small rural town in Missouri. During my 20s, my best friend Jeremy, who was a couple of years younger than me and didn't have his own driver's license, lived 7 miles out of town on its old country highway. For all purposes, I was his only source of transportation. One night after dropping him off, I was driving home in my Ford Escort when these headlights came up behind me. First, I thought it was no big deal, just another car. But this car was moving too fast. It was almost flying. As it moved closer, I could hear how loud the engine was. And looking through the rearview mirror, the headlights were wide apart. It seemed like some type of old muscle car. And no matter what, it kept gaining on me. Then I started to panic. I just knew it was going to hit me. I started sweating, my pulse pounding. And at the moment I thought it was going to make impact, I grabbed my wheel as tightly as I could and tried to brace for collision. Immediately, the car's headlights blinked out, and the noise of the engine was gone. Now, I know this road like the back of my hand. There are no turnoffs, and there's nowhere that car could have gone. And after researching that road, there have been several fatal crashes both before and since my experience. It makes me wonder if people seen the same thing I've seen on this road and just didn't react the way I did, or if it was one of the initial wrecks that spawned this apparition. In 1988, I was excited about my new assignment, security supervisor at a munitions storage area in Germany. Routinely, when we first came on duty, my patrols would do a sweep of their designated sectors, while I stayed behind a security trailer with the radio dispatcher reading the previous night's logs. That particular night, one of my foot patrols found 3 dead deer in a forested area near the base and radioed me. When I arrived on the scene, I noticed that their throats were damaged. 2 had their entrails and hindquarters eaten, along with what appeared to be their liver and heart. Now, we did have wild boar in and out of the area, and these were a small species of deer. So initially I thought none of it, and placed a call to the local forest minister so he can come remove the dead carcasses. And afterwards, I went back to the security trailer to phone the base and write up an incident report. Then I radioed all the units on patrol and told them to return to base. As the patrol started rolling in, we heard this low-level but loud growling and howl coming from west of our location. The foot patrol assigned to that area was still en route back to the base, so I radioed them to get some information. And just as I did, they came running out of the darkness yelling, "Did you guys hear that? Did you hear that?" And right about that time, it howled again. Low, deep, long, and loud. It sounded like it was right within our fence line. The only thing I could think to do was to call an entry point to see if they had permitted any canine patrols. They said no, and also reported hearing the howling. That's when one of the guys looked at me and said, "What if it's that werewolf?" For a second, we looked at each other and then giggled. But then it howled again, this time from the center of our sight. But this howl was unreal. It vibrated your insides. I'm not sure if it was a werewolf or not, but this damn thing sure scared the hell out of us. So there's this guy. He's 20-something years old and lives in my hometown of West Newton, Pennsylvania. Now, I'm not friends or even acquaintances with him, but you can say we have mutual friends. And this group of friends are always talking about him being a werewolf. There was actually no way to know if they were joking or being serious. But what I can tell you is that I'm really into the paranormal. I have a lot of free time on my hands. As for werewolves, I never really believed in that kind of stuff until I met this kid. Just gives me this weird feeling. So I thought, why not take out a little time to investigate this? Start my investigation, I filed him home from work on November the 13th, 2016. The reason I chose that certain date was because it was a full moon. I know, this is cliche. So my friend and I go across the street from this guy's house at 4 p.m. and wait. Eventually, he leaves his house, heading up the road, and we end up following him into the woods on the east side of town. We did our best to follow him from a distance, and eventually hit ourselves in a ditch in the woods. About 5:45, he started doing the strangest thing. He started removing his clothes, and to be honest, we were mouthing to each other, "What the fuck?" the whole time. Then he started to place his clothes into a plastic bag and pulled out this weird-looking pelt. It's made of some kind of fur and hair, but I'm not sure. Then, at 6 p.m., it happened. The unbelievable. His body began to twist and contort in a very unnatural way, and he began to groan in pain. I still get sick describing what happens next, so I'll leave that part up to your imagination. Then the worst possible scenario played out. He saw us. Well, not him. It, the wolf, saw us. My friend ran back towards town, and meanwhile I was having a panic attack. And the only thing I could think to do in self-defense was to pull out a couple of my grandmother's silver spoons from her collection. I threw a couple of them at him, held the rest of them up in his direction. He still persevered and began running towards me. So I booked it out of there. But it only took a couple of seconds for him to catch up. He lunged onto me, slashing my arms with his claws. And with my other hand, I pressed the silver as hard as I could into his body, and he whimpered and ran away. Long story short, when I made it out of the woods, my friend had already called the police. And she lied when they asked if I had tried to harm myself. She said I had, which is probably the best thing. Now I will never leave my house at nighttime or around a full moon ever again. My older brother's been my hero since I was a little boy, and he's always been my protector. I remember when I was 12 years old, the older kids would often pick on me. At this time, he was 17 and played football. Joe was always quick to come to my aid, and he would fiercely fight anyone who decided to lay a finger on me. He went on to join the military and traveled around the world, fighting for our country. Meanwhile, I graduated and became a biology teacher. Now, Joe had been bugging me for years to go camping, and when I finally relented, it was August of 2013. And as an experienced outdoorsman, he had been bragging for years about this camping spot. It was a small clearing he located on the side of a mountain. To get there was a 6-mile hike through the woods, and into the top of this steep incline that damn near killed me twice on the way up. However, when we arrived at the location, I understood why he wanted us to go there. It was beautiful. I mean, this place was like something from a postcard. You could see the city in the distance. And at night, when the lights were on, it almost seemed like you were watching a movie. This place was perfect. Far enough from our city to know you were outdoors, but close enough to be able to get back if something went wrong. As the night went on, we talked by the fire about Mom and Dad and Joe's wedding plans. Joe said,
"Little bro, you do realize that when I get married, we won't have much time for hanging out. That's why I wanted you and I to do this. We need to spend some time together. You my little brother."
I know. I've been so busy at work. I'm glad we finally got some time to do this. It's important to me that we don't let shit separate us. He cooked some hot dogs. We had a few beers. Things were going splendid. Until suddenly, Joe just flipped. What I mean is his personality flipped, almost as if he had turned on a light switch. He got up, walked straight to his tent, and grabbed his rifle from his backpack. At this time, I was not sure what was going on or why he had changed. But I know my brother, and I could read the look in his eyes. He went from the cool, funny guy to the crazy, I will kill you in a second guy. Starting to get nervous. I decided to keep talking and ask him questions about the wedding. But his words went from long, drawn-out answers to short, quick responses as he sat there staring into the wood line. Where's the reception going to be? Thinking I can get hooked up with one of those bridesmaids, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Finally, I said, what's wrong, bro? And his answer?
Someone is out there in the woods. It's too quiet.
He was right. The woods were quiet. Dead quiet. And it was suspenseful, almost like you could feel that something was about to happen, but you just didn't know what it was. Joe stood up and started backing towards the ledge, signaling for me to do the same. And then he fired a shot into the air and shouted,
"Whoever is out there, make yourself known. We are armed."
Just then, the treetops began to shake violently, almost as if the wind was blowing. But it wasn't. There was no wind. Joe looked at me and said,
"Look, we gotta get the hell out of here. This shit is not normal."
Now, the only way out of this situation was to move forward, and I wasn't going in that direction. My brother, never at a loss for what to do, quickly scrambled towards the tent, grabbing 2 bottles of liquor we had for the next night, and began to make Molotov cocktails. "What are you going to do?" I asked.
"We need to see what is out there. We need light around our perimeter."
Just as he said that, the trees began to shake again, and this loud sound could be heard from a distance. It sounded like dogs barking and screaming all at the same time. And then, a howling sound, louder than anything I've ever heard in my life, followed by a roaring scream that sounded like it came from over a mile away. In that moment, you could hear these thuds, like something huge was dropping out of the trees. And then it sounded like all hell broke loose, as whatever it was moved quickly away from us, towards the other 2 sounds. Confused, Joe and I just grabbed our shit and hauled ass out of there. It's been years since that incident. Since that night, I began to study cryptozoology and come to my own conclusions that we were surrounded by Bigfoots. I'm not sure what the howling and barking sound was, but whatever it was, it must have been a threat to them, because they took off in that direction. And to this day, I believe that we were saved by whatever that howling creature was.